Now available in paperback and e-readers. Spellbound, a darker shade of black. Get your copy today at your favorite online bookseller. Now available in paperback and Kindle. All About Marilyn. Learn all about the struggles of a faded former teen sitcom star in this absolutely fabulous 5-star screenplay. Get All About Marilyn in paperback and Kindle on Amazon.com today. Better get the coleslaw, y'all, because we're having us a barbecue. Issa Rae is coming out with a brand new so-called documentary. Now, in this new so-called documentary, Seen and Heard, Issa Rae is making the claim that most of these TV networks built their success on the backs of foundational Black American audiences and Black entertainers, and we almost don't have anything to show for it. Now, as someone who has studied the entertainment industry for over 25 years, I can say that part of what Issa Rae is claiming is to be true. However, I don't think we're going to get an objective picture as related to that argument from a bootlick like Issa Rae, who basically is on the payroll as related to the media arm of white supremacy. Now, this documentary, Seen and Heard, wants to make the claim about how movie studios and TV studios used black audiences and then abandoned them as soon as it was convenient. However, this coming from Issa Rae really isn't someone I would take as credible as related to presenting these talking points. Now, yes, it is true that many TV studios and movie studios used black audiences to build up their platforms, and this goes back as far as NBC back in the 1980s. Now, back in the 1980s, NBC was on the brink of bankruptcy and was almost going to go off the air, and it was Bill Cosby who basically saved NBC by launching The Cosby Show, and from there, basically, that black audience led to NBC being able to become the #1 network from being in last place, and on that success, NBC was able to come back. However, NBC did not go out here and show much gratitude to the black audience that wound up saving that network from almost going out of business by continuing to produce more black content. No, what they did around the 1990s, when they started to see the popularity of white shows like Cheers and Seinfeld and Frasier and Friends start to grow, they abandoned their black audience and decided to go on with a more mainstream audience. And the same thing happened over at Fox when they first came out. Fox basically was a struggling network with its original slate of shows like The Tracy Ullman Show, Married with Children, Duet, and a couple of other shows. And if it wasn't for In Living Color coming out in the 90s and shows like Martin and Living Single and New York Undercover, Fox would basically been a come and gone network, but it was the black audience that basically blustered up Fox. And when Fox started to see that it could reach a more mainstream audience with shows like Beverly Hills 90210 and shows like Melrose Place, they also abandoned their black audience and decided to go with a more mainstream audience because they felt they could make more money with that mainstream audience than the black audience. And the same thing happened with UPN and the WB as well. UPN basically started out with a sci-fi premise with shows like Star Trek Voyager and shows like Nowhere Man and other shows. However, the network struggled even with that core sci-fi and fantasy audience and eventually started putting on more black shows like Moesha and other black programs like Malcolm and Eddie. And in the case of the WB, they started out looking for a black audience. And as they looked for a black audience with shows like the Wayans Brothers and the Jamie Foxx Show and many other black programs, they did very well and with the black audience. But when they started to see they could reach a white audience with shows like Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Dawson's Creek, they abandoned the black audience for that white audience And this is a trend that has been going on for the last 30 years as related to many of these TV networks. Many of these TV networks, basically, they will build their base on a black audience and they get those black viewers to build it up. However, once they start getting some hits like 90210 or Melrose Place, or other shows like Dawson's Creek, or shows like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and start reaching that white audience, they will abandon their black audience and abandon that black audience for the white audience. Moreover, what they will do is go out here and ignore many of the black content creators and black performers that allowed them to gain some notice or acknowledge them. This is what has been going on in the entertainment industry for over 30 years. And many people, again, basically black people, made these networks what they are. And instead of them being able to receive the respect they should receive, what happens is many of those people, again, get completely ignored. I mean, many people don't know about the actions of people like Keenan Ivory Wayans. Again, Keenan Ivory Wayans basically was one of the architects that saved Fox, like Bill Cosby saved NBC. And when it came down to the WB, most of their show, they have a huge debt of gratitude to pay again to the Wayans family and to Jamie Foxx and to many of the people who had those black shows on there. If it wasn't for those black shows, those networks wouldn't be around. And that's where, again, I can agree with Issa Rae on that talking point. However, when I listen to Issa Rae making this claim, it really shows me how full of it she is, because she's talking about how these networks were built on their backs, but she herself was looking to, again, stab many black people in the back as related to being a part of this entertainment industry. Now, Issa Rae is a known bootlick who's gone out here and, again, presented a lot of dysfunctional narratives as related to black people. And as she's gone out here and presented a lot of these narratives as related to black people, what she's done is now she wants to go out here and talk bad about these white networks, because she's not really benefiting from these deals that she's made. She's made a lot of deals with many of these studios, and those deals haven't benefited her, and they haven't benefited her because the media arm of white supremacy, again, when it comes down to the media arm of white supremacy, there is an axiom that Professor Black Truth has presented, and that bootleg isn't a job with a retirement plan. And basically, when it comes down to Issa Rae, she's at the end of her rope. Now, a couple of weeks ago, Issa Rae was sitting here talking about how her new movie was going to open up doors, but it's looking to me like Hollywood is getting ready to close the door on Issa Rae because they no longer have need of her. No, she's basically at the point where she's the punchline of the cruel joke as related to the media arm of white supremacy. And now that they no longer need her, what she's now talking about is how the TV industry is exploiting black creators. But she had no problem going out here producing that kind of content and making compromises with the media arm of white supremacy. And now that they no longer need her, now she's coming out with some docu-ganda talking about how the TV industry exploited black creators, but she was down for producing that exploitive content like Insecure and that rap crap show. She was down for all of that as long as they needed her, but now that they no longer need her, now she wants to talk about how the industry exploited black creators, when in actuality she was having no problem with that exploitation at all, as long as she could make money on these platforms. And now that she can no longer make money on these platforms, she wants to make this Seen and Heard documentary. And this documentary is supposed to show us how everybody is being victimized. But the sad part is that many of the people here, again, they took these opportunities because it was the only thing there, just like she did. And again, took those opportunities because she wanted to be a part of that platform and be seen and heard by white people, and seen and heard and acknowledged by those whites in the media arm of white supremacy. That's what Issa Rae wanted. But now that they no longer need her, what she's doing is talking about how she was exploited. When how can you be exploited when you willingly went along? You went along and compromised with white supremacy. You compromised with white supremacy to get exposure for your projects on their platforms, and you signed that deal like everyone else. That's the critical question I have to ask Issa Rae as related to her doc-Uganda, which really leans to an extreme bias as related to pushing black women over black men. Now, as I've read in the article, she sits there and she talks about people like Oprah Winfrey and Shonda Rhimes and Ava DuVernay, but I don't hear anything in this whole thing about other people who basically were the ones who were the groundbreakers as related to black men. I don't hear anything about Bill Cosby, the man who basically was the first one to basically go out here and save one of these networks, nor do I hear anything about Keenan Ivory Wayans and how he basically saved Fox. I don't hear anything about Charles S. Dutton and the Rock show, which was a big show on Fox. I don't hear anything about Martin Lawrence or many of those people. No, she sits and talks mostly about black women as related to this documentary, and people like Tyler Perry, who are very gynocentric, but doesn't go out here and talk about any of the black men out here. And that's where I call this a doc-Uganda. Again, a doc-Uganda because she goes out here and talks about, again, black women, but doesn't give us any balance. And that's where I have an issue with Issa Rae, as I've always had an issue. She doesn't really present us with a balanced picture. And this is one of my issues with many of these documentaries, which basically, as I call them, doc-Uganda, because they really are slanted, and slanted from a, again, female perspective, but not giving us a balanced one, because all of this really wouldn't have been possible without the work of Bill Cosby in the background. And again, many of these TV networks wouldn't even have success if it wasn't for Bill Cosby, and many black people wouldn't have their jobs if it wasn't for Bill Cosby. Bill Cosby basically worked behind the scenes for many years, opening and kicking down doors. And I look at this documentary never talking about him at all. In the articles I have read that the viewer sent me, I mean, she's talking about black TV history and not talking about Bill Cosby, and that's a glaring omission as related to things, a glaring omission as related to the overall history of TV. When you talk about Oprah Winfrey, but you don't talk about Bill Cosby, Bill Cosby basically, again, opened all the doors for everyone to go through and opened the door to build all of the success. He is the foundation for everything. He was the foundation back in the 1960s when he created the Stuntman's Union, when he helped create the Stuntman's Union for black stuntmen, as related to the Black Stuntmen's Union, and also persuaded Clarence Brown III to take the role in the Mod Squad, which was which was a major role as related to acting, persuaded Richard Roundtree to take the role of Shaft and the Shaft movies, and basically, again, laid the foundation for most of the movies by financing Melvin Van Peebles' Sweet Sweetback's badass song. This was all done by Bill Cosby before he even went out here and did Fat Albert. And also, again, Bill Cosby, again, worked behind the scenes, supporting a lot of other movies like Men of Honor. A lot of people don't know that he helped produce Men of Honor, starring Cuba Gooding Jr. as the first black master diver. Again, Bill Cosby had a lot of contributions to the success of black entertainment, and Issa Rae never mentioning him. That's a glaring omission, because if you're doing, again, an objective analysis of how networks got built, you have to talk about the black men. Again, that's a glaring omission for me with Bill Cosby. Another glaring omission for me is Bernie Mac. The late Bernie Mac basically created the Bernie Mac Show, one of the last big black shows on Fox that was a huge hit. Again, Bernie Mac basically was a man that a lot of people don't talk about. He basically controlled his own show until his passing, again, about 2009, I believe. But Bernie Mac was, a major player as related to his show. And again, she's talking about how they built the success of those networks with black women, but doesn't talk about black men. And that in of itself is disingenuous to me. But that's the way it is with Issa Rae. Again, she's a tool for the media arm of white supremacy, a bootlick, a tool, and a shill who tells half-truths, and talks about how we almost don't have anything for show for it. But one of the reasons why we don't have anything to show for it is because a lot of times with black people, we are the ones who don't have the big picture as related to media, because as Issa Rae omits that Bill Cosby out of her story, she doesn't talk about how Bill Cosby was trying to buy NBC and trying to create a platform for black people to have our own network. I mean, Bill Cosby was about to buy NBC, and this is one of the reasons why people wanted to come after Bill Cosby, because he wanted to control the image of foundational black Americans. And I find it interesting how she also doesn't talk about how Bob Johnson had owned BET, and BET had been around when it was controlled by Bob Johnson. And again, this was a network that was black owned and was built on the success of black shows and created great black content. But sadly, many black people didn't appreciate BET. And as the Telecom Act of '96 was passed, BET eventually wound up. Bob Johnson sold it to CBS, Viacom, or whatever it was called now. I mean, it's called Paramount Global now. And that oligarch basically has destroyed all of the content. And again, we could have had black-owned platforms, and we can still have black-owned platforms as related to creating our own success. But we've got to go out here and make that effort, like I do here on the SJS Direct Imprint. I make an effort to, again, not only create my own content, but own my own content, because I understand when you own and control the images of black people, you are controlling the narrative as related to our stories. This is what I learned from learning about John H. Johnson, who basically controlled the black image on his Johnson publications. But sadly, when it came down to Johnson publications, he did not pass on why this platform was important, and sadly his family didn't take it seriously, and now that whole platform is now basically, as I think, white owned at this point. And again, we can build this stuff, and again, we can build that stuff on our own, but we have to understand the value of what we have, and that's how we have something, again, and show for it. We don't have to go look to be a part of that media arm of white supremacy. No, the money and the resources are there. The money and the resources are there for us to make our own media and have our own platforms, because if they can build their success with our audience, we can build a greater success with our own audience. This is what black people have to understand. We can build our own success and have greater success, but we have to value each other and value the content we produce. We have to go out here and value what another black person produces and appreciate what we have, because that's what Hispanics do with their platforms. That's what Indians and Arabs do with their platforms. That's what's happening in other foreign countries like Korea and Japan. They basically are creating their own media platforms and no longer are having a need for our own entertainment. And we foundational black Americans can go out here and do the same thing. We foundational black Americans can go out here and build our success by creating our own content platforms in this era of streaming. Build our own content platforms in this era of streaming, and again, create great content, reach larger audiences. I mean, we don't have to depend on television, which is now an obsolete platform due to the WGA and SAG-AFTRA strikes, and we don't have to settle for slanted narratives from individuals like Issa Rae anymore. No, we don't have to settle for slanted narratives from an insecure person who wants to present narratives that are appealing to white people, showing insecure black women who don't know how to function. No, we can create narratives that create healthy programming that show balanced, humanized models of behavior for our brothers and sisters that can inspire, uplift, and empower us. We can go out here and create our own media and our own images. That's what I do here on the SJS Direct Imprint. That's what I do with my publications like my Isis, Esteem, and John Haynes series books, and books like the Spinsterella Trilogy and A Recipe for Success and the Thetas, and many other books that I do like Eternal Night. Again, we can create our own content. We don't have to continue supporting their platforms, and we don't have to continue supporting bootlicks like Issa Rae, who are basically, again, making these type of things as a cry for help from those in the media arm of white supremacy who are starting to see no longer a use for a tool that they're eventually wanting to break. And what Issa Rae is trying to do with this documentary is trying to, again, cry for help in a desperate attempt to get help. But the whole thing is she doesn't see how she's the punchline of the long joke they have been playing. And the joke they have been playing with her is that they only needed her for a short time, and now that they found somebody else to do their dirty work for half price, they're going with that person. And this is what's got Issa Rae insecure and looking to be seen and heard with this latest piece of Doc Uganda. Now, if you want to check out some of my positive black fiction on the SJS Direct Imprint, you can find those books on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find them at other online booksellers like Draft to Digital, Google Play, Barnes & Noble, and big box retailers like Walmart and Target. And there you can check out the adventures of the goddess next door based on the Egyptian and Nubian mythology in the Isis series. You can check out the aspiring angel in the Esteem series, and you can check out the adventures of the man who rules the world in the John Haynes series, which is a supernatural series, or you can check out a black goth living in Harlem in the Spinsterella books, or you can go out and pick up my black vampire novel Eternal Night, my black sorority novel The Thetas, or my black business novel A Recipe for Success. I have a lot of great black content that is inspiring and uplifting on Amazon.com, and I also produced a great comic, John Haynes at Death Store, which is on Lulu, and you can check all of that out by clicking the links in the description box. And if you want to see me make more videos taking celebrities to the barbecue, you can drop a donation to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App to click the link in the description box, and I also use that money to continue to pay artists to do the covers and interior art for my books. So every dollar you donate helps me out and helps me to continue creating more great black content, something you won't get from people in Hollywood like Issa Rae. That's all I have to say from this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, All About Nikki, a fabulous first season. The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air meets Clueless in this absolutely fabulous African-American 1990s teen sitcom. Get all 13 episodes of All About Nikki, the fabulous first season, in paperback and e-readers today. Now available in paperback and Kindle, Vampires Stalk the Darkness of the Eternal Night. Get your copy of Eternal Night in paperback and Kindle on Amazon.com. Support black-owned and black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.